Hey everybody, how you doing again? Welcome back to day, what is today? What will day be? I remember when Brian's going to be posted, but it's day like 10, 11, 12 of National Athletic Training Month. I can't remember. But welcome back to Medicine with a Mission, Faith, Family, and the Profession. And this, like I said earlier, we are highlighting a Christian athletic trainer every single day of the month of March to celebrate National Athletic Training Month and celebrate the Christian athletic trainers out there and the difference they're making in the lives of their students, their student athletes, the faculty, their families. And we're just going to be able to talk to one of my friends, live in the same state. He lives out a little west of me, and we're going to talk about how his basically his family life and how his faith and his family and being an athletic trainer, working so many hours. How does all that make? How does he and his wife make that work? So, welcome Brian Stuart, a friend of mine from Abilene. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate you having me on here. It's an honor.
Thank you very much. Brian, tell us, tell our viewers where you are, how long you've been out there, kind of your background professionally. Personally, just kind of share with us what's going on in your life.
Well, I am, I guess, currently in my 23rd year of athletic training. So I've been out here about 22 years doing it ever since I graduated from college back in 1998. I graduated from Abilene Christian, and something about West Texas, when you get out here and you've been out here, you gravitate back. So I didn't stay gone too terribly long from Abilene before I came back. So, but I'm married to a wonderful wife who we've been married for 14 years. And I've got a daughter who's 12 and a son who's 9. And I would just say we have a pretty good life out here. We're really blessed to be where we're at and the things that we get to be involved in here. So, would you like to kind of tell you about my journey when I got to here?
Yeah. Let's talk about how you got to Abilene.
Okay.
For all the people that don't know, Abilene's a very unique town, to be honest with you. Abilene is not very large, but it's not small. It's kind of like one of those really in between. It's a very, in my opinion, I've been to Abilene several times. And I think, Brian, you'll agree with this. Abilene's very, very close-knit, very family-oriented city. Once you get past Abilene, it pretty much opens up to nothing in the state.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, literally, there's nothing between Abilene and Odessa. Abilene and Lubbock. So it's
yeah. Well, people all the time ask, well, where is Abilene? When you go to some other state and you're like, well, do you know where Dallas Fort Worth is? And they're like, yeah, go about 2.5 hours west of there and you'll find it. They're like, oh, okay. And they don't know, but
yep.
It's such a wonderful place to be. That's part of why I wanted to be here, is because you're right. It's a very close-knit community. It doesn't matter really what background of faith you come from. It's a very strong community of faith. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of one of those places everybody knows everybody. So, but it's a good place to be. My path was, I always have felt like in life that, it probably took me a few years to kind of realize this, but God puts you where he wants you when he needs you there. Mm-hmm. And so I really feel like my whole life getting to where I'm at has kind of been a pattern of God putting the right people in the right places in my life. I started out in high school, and I was a pretty good math kid in high school. I thought, man, I want to be an engineer. I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. That's what I'm doing. Well, I get to my senior year of high school and math got a lot harder. And I grew up in Springfield, Missouri. So it's funny to hear everybody likes to call me a Yankee because I'm from there, but I thought I was going to the University of Missouri. That's where I was going. I was going to be a Tiger, and that was it. Well, God had different plans for me. My senior year, I was thinking about where to come, and my youth minister at church, he got with me and he just said, "Are you really sure that's where you want to go?" He's like, you could go to Abilene Christian down and be just fine there, and you're going to have a better faith background for you. So I thought about it a long time. I thought, that probably would be a good place for me to be. So that was kind of what got me to Abilene. So here I sit the summer before my for my freshman year at ACU, and I'm like, well, I want to be involved. I like sports. I was very involved in sports in high school. As far as I'm not the athletic type, so I'm not going to go out there and tell you, man, I played every sport. I didn't. I was more of the manager type, but I love sports. I helped with basketball, helped with football, helped with baseball, but I knew I wanted to be involved once I got back to or once I got to ACU. So kind of called down there, and somehow I ended up talking to the head football coach at the time. And he said, hey, you need to talk to this other guy. So a good friend of mine, a guy that ended up being a good friend of mine, he was leading the athletic training department at the time. And it kind of got me in the door. And I had never really done any sports medicine stuff. Maybe a camp once in high school. My basketball coach wanted to go learn how to tape, but that's kind of the theory of a lot of people. Hey, as long as you know how to tape, you kind of know how to do everything. But I got in my freshman year, and I enjoyed it and I loved it. And I was like, I never knew that I could really like something the way I could. And I stayed with it for 4 years. I ended up taking me about 5 years to finish college. My 5th year, me and the head trainer there had a falling out, mostly probably due to, I would just say, immaturity on my part, but I still stuck with it and ended up getting my license. So here I am. I get out of school, and I'm this single guy, and I start looking for jobs. Well, one pops up in Navasota, Texas. So here I am, jump in my car, go to Navasota, Texas. Well, you don't really know who you're going to be around. And, me, I grew up Church of Christ, so it kind of meant something to me at the time to have those kind of people around me. Well, lo and behold, I get to Navasota High School, and the head basketball coach at the time, he's an elder at the Church of Christ in town. The superintendent at the time, he was an elder of the Church of Christ in town. So it kind of helped having that background of people with me. And I stayed in Navasota 2 years, and then I went to Bay City, Texas, and I was there for 4 years. And that's down around oil country. It's down. You're about, I would say, about 15 miles off the coast. It's in Matagorda County. It's I say another bigger small town. It's about 10,000, maybe 15,000 people. The town. But I really would say that's probably where my faith started growing a lot more, because I got involved in church. I was with these kids at school, and I kind of, because it was a small community, and because it was, I was kind of put in a position where I wanted to help, but I kind of got asked to help to be involved with their youth group. So I helped with different things with the church, and so I was there 4 years, and then it was probably just, I really felt like it was time, and I was still fighting some issues about, this is just not where I want to be. I felt like it wasn't where I really wanted to stay the rest of my life. And so I had a buddy of mine offer me a job back here in Abilene. And so I came back to Abilene, I guess 17 years ago now. So I went to work for a clinic as an MRI tech with this buddy of mine. And I did contract athletic training also while I was at this clinic. And I was also an MRI tech for this clinic too. So I stayed there for 4 years. In the midst while I'm being there, I find a church family here. And this is where I kind of met my wife. Kind of lo and behold, I was doing contract athletic training with a town outside of Abilene, and I knew some friends that went to church out there. And like, well, you really just need to meet this girl. Da 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 da. I met her, and I'll just be honest with you. I probably the first time I just totally blew it with her. So it was probably 5 or 6 months, and I finally decided to ask her out, and it was I always say it was a godsend, because that day she had finally broke it off with an ex-boyfriend and just said, I'd had enough of you. And so I always say, it's God's timing. We got together at the right time, and we dated for about 5 or 6 months before we got married, because I was 31 at the time, and I just was kind of at that point. I knew what I wanted in a wife, and she was everything that I wanted. And now that I've been married to her this long, more than I knew I could ever want. Mm-hmm. And so all this time, just watching, and I look back and I see this, where God kind of led me down this path to where I was at this point. And I just like, okay. So I worked there at that clinic for 4 years. And in the meantime, I marry my wife. She becomes pregnant with our first child. Well, my job kind of gets phased out at the clinic due to insurance requirements, what they wanted for MRI techs, because I was not a registered MRI tech, and that was what insurance were wanting. So I ended up coming out of the job, and I found a job at Abilene Wiley. And at the time, and it still is, there's a lot of tradition at Abilene Wiley. Even then, they were a 3A school, went to state every other year, or went deep in the playoffs, very well known. And I went to work for a guy named Hugh Sandiford. And if anybody knows anything about Texas high school football, he's probably along the lines of Gordon Wood and some of those other guys, just how well he's known. And he was a great guy to work for. And so I've been, like I said, I've been at Wiley for 13 years now. I've been able to be involved in and out with athletics. And because of the woman I married, God put the right woman in my life for who I need. She is a very caring, very compassionate, and she's very cognizant and understands the time that I put in. So with that, even since my kid's been born, we try to make situations where we work, where like if it's a night where I'm working and she can be where I'm at, well, she'll come to a game, and if it's basketball, we'll sit in the stands behind the bench and we'll watch the game. And I'm working, but I get to spend time with my family. And she likes sports, which helps that too. So it's not like she's just there to hang out with me. So we've done that. We've drug our kids along to these things. And so with that, I've got to spend more time with my family while I'm doing my job, which it's been a huge blessing to me. So,
yeah, because a lot of people don't realize how many hours that we put in, especially at the school level. I mean, it could be in the peak times of the year, it could be, 60 to 70 hours a week, easy.
Oh yeah.
If you're married and if you have a significant other or have kids, it can be a challenge. So how has during that time, obviously, you're very fortunate that both of you are believers, and you believe that in your faith is the glue that keeps your family together. Christ is that foundation. How have you seen your faith in Christ played out, for lack of better terms, say in the workplace, in your athletic training room with your kids and your student athletic trainers, maybe your coaches? How is that all, especially in we're to speak at Wiley, how has that all evolved and manifested itself at Wiley?
Well, I would love to sit here and tell you, man, I've been this awesome Christian. I've had this strong heart all the way, but I'm human. That's the best way I can put it. And it has taken me probably, I'll be honest, probably till about 2 or 3 years ago to kind of come out of this funk, because I really felt depressed. Satan drugged me down a lot for a long time, questioning where I was at, being mad about hours and all these kind of things. And it's taken me a long time, and God has guided me through it to kind of understand that, like I said, I have to keep coming back to this, that he puts me at the right place at the right time. And I know I reached out to you probably a year or two ago. I was talking about ways I could probably talk to my kids more in the training room. And that's a hard line to walk being in a public school, I'll be honest, because I want to share my faith, but it's hard to share your faith to kids not knowing, well, how are parents going to react to this? What is the school going to allow me to say?
Right.
Like I say, I'm blessed to be in a community where there are a lot of believers in Abilene, so it's a little easier to talk. But I think what I try to impress upon my kids that I work with, and even the athletes, is just showing them love, because no matter where they come from, kids come from a lot of places, and so I try to just, and I say love for the fact to give them a hug, give them a high five, joke them about what's going on with their life, maybe tease them a little bit about their injury, just kind of keep them going, but just let them know that I care about them. But I do have to instill, obviously, some of those morals. Like, I'm not just going to let you obviously talk about whatever you want to talk about in the training room, but I'm also going to just try to insert bits and pieces of, this is moral things, it's not moral things, and this is kind of how things work out in life if you don't work this way. And so that has kind of helped me a lot over the past couple of years, and trying to take a breath of peace about things, even with my coaches, take a breath and step back. I work with a lot of coaches, once again, who come from a lot of different backgrounds. So it's interesting how it plays out with them too. So,
well, I think I have been able, the last couple of weeks, I've been able to interview several athletic trainers that are in the secondary school and that are in public schools. And they all said the same thing. You know, we've got a line, we walk, and we can't, you know, you got to walk that fine line when it comes to faith. But every single one of them has basically said the same thing, is that it all comes down to relationships.
Mm-hmm.
To develop those relationships with your kids. They trust you. And, you know, I think that we're in a situation as Christian athletic trainers that God uses us, and he there's somehow, I don't know how he does it, but he allows kids to know where we are coming from.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I do tell my kids, I said, what you have to understand is I'm a Christian. I go to church. So you have to understand that's where my thoughts and a lot of my things come from. So because I need them to understand that, like, hey, I'm not some kind of old fuddy-duddy that, you know, this is, you know, just you act like my grandpa. Well, no, there's a reason that I ask for these things. But I think that at some point, maybe that does give the kids comfort, because my co-athletic trainer and I, we sit and lock a lot, and we talk to kids a lot of times, and they feel comfortable coming into our office, and we can sit and talk to them about things going on in life. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about a problem as far as what's functioning in the training room. It can even just be what's going on at home, what's going on with the job,
Yep.
what's going on within a class with a teacher. They're having a hard time. So I'm blessed to have that kind of relationship with the kids that work for us. I could say that.
Yeah. I've had that. I've lost count of how many conversations I would have with athletes and some of my student athletic trainers, and even students that were friends with some of my athletes or friends with some of my student athletic trainers that had nothing to do with athletics. They would come down, and I had developed a relationship with them, that they would come and just want to download. I mean, want to just just kind of let it all hang out, let it just talk.
Yeah.
And say, hey, you know, doc, this is what's going on. How would you handle it? Can you,
Yeah.
you know, and that's where the conversation really can get really kind of really neat and cool, because then you're able to really invest in their lives and help them navigate through some issues that they don't know how to handle.
Yes.
I think that we as athletic trainers, we have a very unique opportunity to do that in the lives of athletes, and especially when we can show them and love them as Christ loves them, it makes it even more special.
Yes. Well, and I think that's the biggest thing for me, is because, like I say, you've got people from different backgrounds, and I look at that, like, I look at the life of Jesus. He treated everybody good. He didn't care what background you were from. Like the woman at the well, you know, I see that story. Or even if you were Jewish or a Gentile, he didn't really care what background you're from. He was willing to take you where you're at. And that's kind of where I'm at with these kids. I kind of have to sit and I listen to things. And there's things that, like, you know, for lack of better terms, that, you know, will just irk you a little bit. Like, oh my gosh, how do people, like, how do the kids think this stuff? Or how do people think this stuff? Or how do they think it's okay? But you have to be willing to, you know, sit there and listen to some of those problems sometimes and say, hey, I love you for where you're at. And, you know, obviously not maybe sometimes those terms, just say, hey, I know where you're at, and it's okay to be where you're at. So let's, you know, and take them for where they're at. And I say for where they're at, because, you know, you hear all sorts of things, you know, being in an athletic world, and especially around kids, some kids who don't go to church, you hear lots of language, you hear lots of stories about things that they're doing inside or outside the training room. And so you have to, obviously I have to sit back and take a breath, but you have to be able to go, okay, so do you really think that's the right thing to do, or whatever? And take them where they're at. Yeah, I guess that's the biggest thing. So,
yeah. Well, hey, Brian, before we close,
yes.
And I ask this question to everybody that I talk to.
Mm-hmm.
What is that one verse or verses that you would consider maybe the foundation of your life, or your verse, the one that you just, that's it. This is the one that I go to all the time. This is the one that I lay my, that I build upon.
Well, I probably, and this is probably going to sound kind of generic, but I do put a lot of faith in this verse. I like Philippians 4:13, where it says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me.
Mm-hmm.
I look at that because I'm a person, I struggle a lot. And I'll be honest, I struggle a lot with confidence sometimes, but I can also look back and say, because of that verse, and say, times when I thought I was weak, I was actually strong enough to be in those situations, and I'm going to be okay. So that's why I appreciate that verse a lot. And it means a lot to me in my life and what I do. So
That's a good point. I mean, I haven't heard someone say that that verse gives them comfort because of when you like I said, when you see the word strengthens, with your confidence issue, or some people may have anxiety or depression, or whatever, that they can overcome. They can do all those. They can do other things. They can do all that because of him giving them the strength through their circumstances.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy. That's really good. Well, Brian, and I appreciate you very much for joining us on this. You'll be, I think, let's see, what day you on? You're next week, whatever next week. Week of the 8th. So so I just want to again thank you very much for coming on with us and being a part of National Athletic Training Month and this podcast. And if you want to learn any more about Christian Sports Medicine Alliance, maybe you want to support our ministry and help us reach our profession and beyond, go to our website at christiansportsmed.org. You can also follow us on Twitter at tweetcsma. If you are a Christian athletic trainer and you want a place on Facebook that you can do life and kind of encourage each other and share your prayer requests or just what God's doing in your life, get on Facebook and join our Facebook group called Beyond the ATR. It's a great area just to kind of do life. I know Brian's on there. He's on there with us quite often. And again, Brian, I really do appreciate it. Hope everything's in Wiley is doing good, and we will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it.
You too, bud. Thank you.
Bye-bye.